Beers and Banter, episode 44. We've got Tony Webeck back in the house tonight. We'll have a look at the NRL AFL Grand Finals. We might pick an origin side and find out what's happening in the world of golf. Let's do it. As always, we're really appreciative of the support from the guys at Gripstar Socks. Gripstar anti-slip socks feature panels that create traction that improves speed, acceleration and stability. Gripstar socks are designed to deliver maximum comfort and flexibility, featuring a breathable mesh design that removes sweat and reduces odours. Perfect for high movement sports, working on your feet or lounging safely at home. Seriously grippy. Beers and Banter. Welcome, Tony.
Thanks, Red. Nice to be back. I was a bit worried you weren't going to invite me back for a while there, but
well, it's been a weird sort of a world in the last couple of months. I think we saw you in July. How's it been treating you since then?
yeah, I guess like everyone, just grateful that we had some footy to watch, and amazing to sit here now in October 27 with 2 grand finals under the belt and Origin to look forward to, and we weren't sure that was going to be possible a few months ago. So we should be very grateful that we got a footy season in, and
we were 2 rounds in and the world sort of got tipped on its head, and we certainly didn't know whether we were going to get our footy season, and then to get the exciting footy season that we got was amazing.
And I think for me, a lot of the way through it, you were waiting for the needle to come out of the balloon, and for one thing to bring it undone. It seemed like the way the world was going, we were never too far away from it collapsing on itself. But here we are, and thanks to the great man PVL, we've got a season under the belt.
Whatever he did or who he employed, all the American sports, no other sports around the world have managed to keep their sports COVID free for that period of time and get what they've get their seasons in. It's amazing. What I did hear though was that there's potential that next season might be harder to get off the ground than this season. Because if the world's still the way it is, and, if crossing state lines is as hard as it is now, that maybe the Warriors guys are not going to sign up for 26 rounds living away from home, and Melbourne's not going to sign up for 26 rounds away from home, and that everyone's been getting the job done because it all sort of fell into place as it did, but there's potential that next year could be harder than this year.
Yeah, the Warriors guys are very much aware that they could end up spending a lot of it next season in Australia again, and they've got an alignment with Redcliffe, and there was discussions that they would be based at Redcliffe, play most of their games at Dolphin Stadium, but then maybe play the few of the big ones at Suncorp. They rejected that because they said if they come back, they want to be back on the Central Coast.
Yeah, okay.
So those plans, as crazy as it is to think, I think many of us expect the world to go back to normal on January 1, but they're ready. They're getting ready to be based in Australia again.
The only hope is that, New Zealand seems to be forming part of this trans-Tasman bubble, that hopefully that if New Zealand and Australia can stay, COVID-free essentially over the summer, hopefully they could play out of New Zealand and fly backwards and forwards.
Yeah, even if it was a matter of them playing the first 6 weeks at home, coming over for 2 months, and then perhaps going home, having a bye for what could essentially be 10 to 12 days, stay within their own bubble, but maybe be quarantined from everyone else in Auckland, and then have another run of, I hope they get some home games next year. I hope we can come out, somehow find a way that, ideally Australia and New Zealand will be COVID-free and we can all mix easily, but I'd hate to see them have to go through another year. But, and the flip side to that is they probably performed better because they had better preparation because they weren't travelling 2 days a week.
I saw that in Melbourne a couple of months ago. You just saw that they had this real weird kind of man love sort of mojo going on amongst their team. And, it was like sort of what you'd see at the end of a long kangaroo tour or something. Like finishing each other's sentences. You know, they've got all their inside jokes. When Craig Bellamy started smiling in videos, I knew the other teams were in trouble because they just seemed to be on top of it. And they didn't win all the games throughout the year, but you could tell that they were just ready to play for each other, and they had, you know, they probably knew what the other guy was going to do before he did it himself, sort of thing, and sort of that showed on the weekend. They were very tight. You know, they've been living in each other's pockets for so long, and you know, I think that could have been the difference.
We shouldn't make light, I guess, of the fact that the families were either separated or had to be away from their homes, kids uprooted from school. Those kind of things, you know, are certainly a big factor. But if you're a footy team, packed away on the Sunshine Coast, hanging out together every day, doing nothing but playing footy, it's a pretty good environment to be stuck in.
It's very unlikely that anyone's turning up late to training. No one's going. I would assume no one was out playing the pokies till late at night, or doing other things late at night. Definitely, there would be an advantage, some advantages to doing that. Yeah,
and it took away, really, for better or worse, the life commitments you would normally have to manage on your day-to-day. You know, whether it's getting the kids to and from school or getting home for dinner or these kind of things. It was like a big long holiday. I don't know how many of the Storm players had family and how much of their family with them on the Sunshine Coast. Same with the Warriors. But I think those environments and the lack of travel, you know, didn't hurt either of those teams.
Teams like Canberra did it hard this year because even their home games was a 4-hour bus ride for a big chunk. Not the back end of the year, I think they got their home games back, but you know, Penrith had a good run, would have been playing fairly local most of the time. But yeah, there were certainly teams that would have affected worse, that flying in and out on the same day.
And we shouldn't underestimate what the Warriors have to go through in a regular season. Like their international flights, and I had it explained to me that when they have an international flight, they can't do anything the next day. That's mandated by the RLPA that they can't come into the club the day after an international flight. So for them,
so not even come in for an ice session?
No, nothing. They can't come to the club. It's day off completely.
Yeah, right.
So you take that out of every prep to and from, and they've got a lot skinnier turnaround than many people probably realise.
You compare that to the Broncos play at Suncorp Thursday night, ice baths Friday morning, probably have the weekend off, back to work Monday.
It's a big factor. And we probably were a bit blind to it until we sort of saw what the Warriors could do when they had a proper week's preparation.
Yeah. And without going too far into 2021, but the Broncos may not get that luxury next year. Coming off the season they've just had, will they? Do you still think they'll pull rank with Channel 9 and have a Thursday or Friday night game most nights?
Well, they don't pull rank because they would love more Saturday and Sunday games. They would love Sunday. You know, I've spoken to Paul White in the past about, you know, it's hard for them to sell family memberships. You know, they would love to sell.
Because Thursday nights are hard.
Thursday, Friday night, you know, getting the kids home at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, it's not ideal. So, I mean, if you could give them half a dozen Sunday games, I reckon they'd be thrilled. But it's the ratings and who fills the void, you know, hopefully.
Titans.
Well, that's the way it's looking. That's the way everyone's second favourite team now.
Before we get too far down the track, did you watch the AFL Grand Final firstly on the Saturday?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's the most interest I've had in an AFL Grand Final, perhaps for a long time. Perhaps just because it was in Brisbane, but
I tried to get on the bandwagon the week before. I was hoping I'd watch the Lions, and I was hoping they'd get up, but Geelong were too good. And Gaz probably the difference there, Gary Ablett. So I thought I'd put a little wager on over the weekends. You know, gamble responsibly, folks. But I thought Cameron Smith, Gary Ablett, Norm Smith, Churchill double. Which was actually harder to do through the app than I thought it was going to be. It was one thing. And then I thought, I'll do a backup bet, Dusty and Nathan Cleary. So I basically put the mocker on most of them.
Well, yeah, you're 1 out of 4.
Yeah. Gaz
has gone after 5 minutes.
And that hurts. I've coming off a dodgy shoulder and one that's only just been fixed after about 20 years of agony. that hurts. If your shoulder's a bit dodgy and you land on it like that, there was nothing. He would have had nothing there. Forget the pain. Your shoulder goes real weak, like because the tendons, loosen or whatever. But you've got no power in it. And you could see him just grimacing when he was trying to
every
tackle.
time.
But he played well, considering.
It was an incredible start. Like both, it's probably the craziest NRL Grand Final I've almost ever watched. It just seemed so bizarre and just haphazard. And the AFL Grand Final, the first 15 minutes of that was just carnage. They were just blokes, not only Ablett, but the guy, it was
head injury,
Broad from, I think, from
concussion.
Richmond. That was, and even late in the game, I think it was another, maybe one of the Geelong guys went up for a contested mark and
took his own player out.
Yeah. It's like they were incredible hits, and like it was a really fascinating game because it looked like Geelong. My understanding is that Geelong, they've been in and around it for a while, and they just have this issue with getting over the last hurdle. And when they're up by 20 odd points in the second quarter, you think, well, they've probably got past the psychological challenge of this. They're in this game. They are. But I think once the momentum turned, they just couldn't find a way to wrest it back at all.
I was feeling a bit. I was unwell over the weekend. Got a bit of the man flu, and I was struggling. And this is a case for not having late grand finals. But I was watching it in
It's like 7:30.
Yeah, but it was nearly 9:30 by the time it finished. I was buggered. Anyway, I was obviously starting to nod off. The wife grabs a remote and changes the channel. And I'm like, hey, I'm watching that. And she goes, you're snoring. Anyway, so I had to go. And she goes, Richmond wins. And I'm like, it's still got 6 minutes to go. There's only 3 kicks in it. And as it turned out, Richmond kicked away after that. But
three-quarter time, it was 2 points, and I thought it was a really great contest. But then I do, we don't see dynasties very often anymore in modern sport. And I was kind of, as much as I probably went in there hoping Geelong would win just to break it up a bit.
Yeah.
It's something pretty special to see a dominant team come through and a dominant player to win 3 Norm Smith medals and do it the way he did. There was no, I think most people in the NRL Grand Final, 10 minutes to go, were saying, who do we give the Clive Churchill to?
I thought Smith was going to get it for sure.
There was the 3 circles of thought I saw were Nelson Asofa Solomona because he'd been so good in the middle, Smith for the sentimental reason, and then
He scored a try and kicked all the goals.
Yeah, and does what he does every game, and Pappenhausen for like the brilliance of it. But the AFL Grand Final was no question. But for him to be so dominant in the biggest game of the year 3 times in 4 years, man, I'm not an AFL expert, but they're already talking about top 5 ever and
crazy
and rising.
And the boys seemed like they were partying pretty hard too. I reckon he's in that top 5 as well. Going from some of
my favourite
some of the Instagram stories I saw over the weekend.
My
boys
favourite thing about the AFL Grand Final in Richmond is first was Jack Riewoldt singing with the Killers a few years ago up on stage. That was awesome.
Yeah.
And then the post they did on Instagram to the Dreams Fleetwood Mac, little viral video of Jack drinking out of the AFL trophy.
Righto.
It was Jack Riewoldt and post game singing is a big part of my AFL Grand Final experience.
While we're on singing, then the DMAs versus Amy Shark. I thought Amy Shark got the chocolates. To be fair,
I didn't see the AFL pre-game. I watched a lot of
it's a snooze fest.
Like Shepherd and Wolf Mother and all that stuff, but I didn't. Yeah, I'm not a
Shepherd went all right at half time. They were a bit better. Wolf Mother was good. I didn't see that. Did the NRL have halftime entertainment?
I don't think so. Not that we saw.
I don't know. I got distracted by the kids or something.
But I thought, and I've seen, and she's a Gold Coast girl, and the
Titans fan.
Titans. The fact she worked when I first moved up here. Amy was still working at the Titans in their media team, and you're like, every time she's on TV now, I say to the kids, I used to work with her. I know her. And to bring out, the guys from In Excess, I thought was a great.
That was great. Yeah.
Little unexpected. Obviously, we can't get international guests this year, and I thought that was a really nice touch, and I thought she did a great job. And
Considering at the start of the year they were talking like potentially Tina Turner back to sing "Simply the Best," and obviously I think that was long odds before coronavirus. But
did you see that Sportsbet found the saxophone player from that grand final in
and put
1990 or
Volandi's
whatever?
face on it?
No. Like they did an interview with him.
Oh, righto,
They
yeah.
posted it on their social media, and you don't realise until you watch that video of Tina Turner singing the grand final just how central a figure that guy was, thrusting his hips, playing the saxophone.
It's hard because part of me wants to just stay in that nostalgia forever, and my wife and I were talking about it on the weekend because Amy Shark was copying it online. Oh, why have they gone with Amy Shark? It should be Barnesy and blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, part of me says it should be like Aussie rock every year from the 90s or from the 80s. But the reality is, like, you've got to engage. That's good for my generation and older, but it's the people younger than us. They're the next NRL diehards you're trying to inspire, so you got to get them.
The best one I reckon we've had in recent years was Macklemore. Because
it's pretty good.
Even in our house, so my daughter must have been 3 or 4 at the time. She was up and into it. My son was enjoying it. I was enjoying it. My wife was enjoying it. Like, that was a moment that went global.
We saw him at Botanical Gardens in Brizzy, probably that same year.
What, just walking around? Or?
No, as in no, in concert. In concert, it wasn't the best concert, but I think it was the venue more so than the artist. But
I thought that it came at an important, I guess, social time, and it ticked a lot of boxes. I think the ones that are most memorable to me, like I saw Birds of Tokyo at the Origin a couple of years ago and bought the album when I got home. I sang 3 songs and I'm like, it was perfect. Good. It was like the perfect pump up. I actually pitched on Twitter, this is before COVID obviously, but to secretly fly Metallica in and just have the playing in the background, the Enter Sandman building up, and then you cut to them.
What about Angus? AC/DC are about to launch a new album.
Yeah, it sounds like all the other.
Have you heard it already?
It sounds like every other AC/DC song.
I didn't think I needed another AC/DC album, and I certainly didn't think I needed another tour until I saw that they'd assembled it's all the old firm. So it's Phil Rudd back on drums. You've got Brian Johnson back on vocals by some scientific miracle. They've fixed his hearing. But, yeah, I certainly didn't want to see something with Axl Rose at the front of it, because I've seen him 3 or 4 times, and I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. That comes from my brother's influence, and a lot of people in my family love AC/DC. But I was like, do you know what? I've seen enough. We don't need any more albums. But apparently, this album is basically
ballads.
Well, this album is
that'd be a surprise.
Is to Malcolm Young what Back in Black was to Bon Scott.
Okay.
So it's like this is a tribute to Malcolm, where Back in Black was for Bon. So I'm willing to get behind it.
I'm sure it'll sound like all the others.
It probably will. It probably will. They've had their early 90s, 80s stuff was brilliant.
Like, for a grand final, it'd be perfect.
Shoot to Thrill or something. Oh my
any
God.
of it.
But do you know what? Amy Shark with the guys from INXS was a good combo, I thought.
Yeah, and I think that's where we get things. I went to the Arias years ago, and they had Silverchair with Midnight Oil. Those kind of cross-generational, like when you're not expecting it, and they can pull it off.
I think maybe that's probably what the AFL were trying with Wolfmother. But he had, who was he with? It wasn't just Wolfmother, it was the dude from Wolfmother.
Yeah, it was just, Andrew Stockdale, whatever his name is. But
I'm not very good with music.
We get very excited about grand final entertainment. It's probably the toughest gig in music. You're singing to 50,000 people who aren't watching, for the most part.
They should definitely turn it into they should play 1 or 2 songs, but then they should turn it into a live concert after the...
Well, that's what I think the AFL did really well with the Killers a few years ago. That was like... they played a couple pre-game, but then, they sing Mr. Brightside and Jack Riewoldt gets up on stage after winning the premiership, and they sing 3 or 4 more, and you got a reason to hang around, and it becomes a concert. I think that's a great idea. But
Yeah.
Grand final entertainment. We could fill 3 podcasts with it.
Yeah, you're right. It's tough gig, tough to book. You got to find someone that's trying to promote it. I think they're doing a little bit better than a couple of years ago. It was just whoever the judges were on The Voice. That was horrendous.
And the national anthem was sung by whoever was doing the theatre production in town that week.
Yeah. Anyway, too much time on that. Overall, what did you think of the NRL season once they got it back underway, the new rules, like anything stood out for you? What do you think?
No, obviously the score lines got broader, wider. We saw a few more blowouts, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. We shouldn't dumb the competition down for the worst performing. We should make them elevate themselves to the top team. So, no, I found it really entertaining. And at the start when Peter V'landys was changing rules every week, and you think this can't, like one wrong foot and the competition sort of falls on its head, but he hasn't put a foot wrong yet, really. So,
yeah,
one referee.
We're not going back to 2 referees.
I hope not.
There was a couple of little controversies in the grand final. One was the obstruction ran behind the player, kick to the corner try. That was no try, in my opinion.
Agreed.
It was but there was other cases where players running behind players and it didn't get pulled up. It's one of those things that it gets less scrutiny if there's no try scored off it.
Yeah, if you take the advantage.
But when we were kids, if you ran behind your own player, it was just an instant.
Hand the ball over.
Yeah, pass the ball over. And that's, I don't know, when Joey's blowing up from the commentary box, that's what my old man was like, well, if Joey's saying they don't even know the rules, surely there's got to be a button to override it. But there was that one. I didn't think Jerome Hughes was a professional foul in the sense that I don't think he changed direction. I don't think he stepped one way or the other. He just stopped and braced himself. And he knew he was going to clean him up, but he couldn't. There was nowhere he was going to go anyway.
I've got no doubt he did it on purpose, but I don't think it's worth a sin bin.
Hectic Cheese, that was probably a sin bin because he was doing it on. He was just hanging on, waiting for the penalty.
It was a good. I heard someone last night talk about the last time a team finished in a grand final with 11 players and won.
Yeah,
it must be I haven't seen the stat brought up, but it must be the first time that's ever happened.
To finish with 11, yeah. I'm sure someone could correct us there. Tell us in the comments below, but I'm sure. There've
been some wild grand finals in the 70s, but
yeah. So they got to try it. The skeptic in me goes, well, they were trying to make it a closer finish than it was shaping up to be. But who knows?
I think the chaos started from the kickoff.
Yeah,
it was like Marty Bella in '94 all over again. Like it was, you just thought. And I think Penrith did get flustered by the fact that it all went wrong for Melbourne in the first 5 seconds, but they just couldn't get that try that Canberra did 25 years ago. Like
every time they kept them out, it was a little bit
harder. It just felt like off the kickoff that okay, here go the Panthers. Look, they're on the attack. Here they go. And I think they got caught up in that for a bit as well. And then of course Melbourne go the other end, get a penalty try, which I personally thought was a bit harsh. I don't think he kicked the ball out. I think he put his feet where the ball was headed. But there are other players in the area. It was close to the sideline. I don't know if I would have... He could have, if he hadn't put his legs but put his arms there, does that...
As soon as it happened, I was like, it's going to go penalty try.
Really?
Because of the way they've interpreted that rule over the last few years. I'm not necessarily a fan of, that rule was brought in to stop players getting kicked in the head.
Yeah.
Now, if you're like basically on your butt trying to stop the bloke putting the ball down, you should be able to put your feet under the ball, which is essentially, it's not like he was striking out with his foot to dislodge the ball. So potentially, I knew as soon as it happened, it was like, yeah, they'll pay that. And even the commentator said it's either a send off or a try. So,
and then of course Panthers go the other end and get denied a try with an obstruction call, which is fair enough.
Yeah, it's the right call.
It just felt like their opportunities had just passed them by in the first 10 or 15 minutes, and all of a sudden it was 10-0. I still, Gus Gould's copped a hammering, but I was along his line of thinking of that Penrith were actually going really well. Midway through the first half, they were on top, except the scoreboard said 14-0.
Yeah. We spoke about it last time we were on the pod, like tailored content for members, and I wonder whether we've reached the point in time where you should be able to select which audio you want. It's 2020 for crying out loud.
Yeah.
And most people I know, that they're spewing come grand final weekend because part of the reason they've got Fox is so they don't have to listen to Gus. So when they're forced to listen to them on grand final day and Penrith Panthers are playing, it's just makes their ears bleed. And you and I spoke about, as members, you want to hear a biased call. So all the Panthers fans would be loving Gus being on the commentary or Brandy when it's his turn. But maybe it's time that I think a grand final should be someone like Andrew Voss, I'm sure Vossi has it deep down in his heart's got a team that he goes for, but you wouldn't know it from his calls. He's fairly agnostic, and there's a few good guys.
Same with Rabs.
Rabs, obviously, but when you've got, Gus and Fatty and Sterlo and that, you know where they're biased. Freddie, Andrew Johns, they've all hard and fast with the team. Now, I know they're the greats, and they're chiming in with the expert opinion. But for Gus to be part of the live call, I'm not a fan of that.
His greatest crime might have been trying to seem to be unbiased.
Yeah.
Because, I think he's the most insightful analyst that the game has. I think whether he's gone beyond kind of his own.
So you look with him through blue eyes, whereas I look at him through maroon eyes.
Yeah, well, I just think he says things, and again, I agreed with the fact that he was talking about when they were 10 and 14 points down.
Yeah.
You could sense that Penrith were actually winning the contest.
Was one of them when it got to 22? Was one of them a intercept?
Yeah. So they've had a penalty try and intercept. Yeah, sure. And but in the run of play, I felt that Penrith were going pretty well. 14-0 to 22-0 by half-time was the killer.
Yeah.
If they could have been 14-0 at half-time, or ideally 14-6, they go into the sheds tails up and...
Well, you talk about stats. Melbourne Storm being up by 22 at half-time.
They're not going to lose.
There's not many games in the last 10 years that they'd lose.
But
we're cracking stubbies.
The anti-Gus was rife on Twitter, that's for sure.
Yeah,
I'm surprised people were surprised. And maybe he should have been overtly biased and maybe people would have accepted
He tries
it
that
more.
sometime at Origin. He tries to talk up, the Queenslanders, and that just rubs people the wrong way as well, I reckon, because they can just see through it.
Yeah, but with Fatty, we seem to think it's charming.
Because Fatty's our lone ranger. He's usually sitting at a desk with 5 other Blues. Great.
JT and
we're starting to infiltrate there a bit
Wally
more.
And he got a few in there, a few handy ones.
So we're on the James Squire Broken Shackles. I've never had these before. It was a bit of a mystery pick at the checkout the other day, but they're going all right.
Yeah, very, very smooth.
1.3 standard drinks. First time on the pod. Going all right.
Welcome, James.
So, overall, I thought it was a good season. Titans. I tell you what,
Can we start the 2021 next week?
We were robbed. Titans should have played finals this year.
Just be 8 teams glad they didn't, or 7.
There was a couple of teams I reckon would have been very happy they didn't slide into the 8 because there's a couple of teams that were not in great form going in and we were in red-hot form. I feel like we were robbed against the Sharks, raw deal against the Roosters, and I don't think Penrith convincingly beat us.
No.
There's 3 games there that you think if one of those is a different outcome, and we can blame ourselves because we started. That's what makes the start of the season so hard to deal with. Is that when you look at how well that group went at the back end of the year, you think one more game.
Should we mention the elephant in the room here?
The send off?
No.
What's that?
The last time I was in this studio, I had just
You
taken membership.
Pledged your allegiance.
Did they lose a game from that point on?
Not many. The Titans execs
steep
would
upper.
certainly be happy with your support. You also pledged your allegiance for the Suns around the same time, and they fell off the side of the world.
They did drop off a little bit. They were competing really well. I got excited. They had a couple of 1-point losses sort of not long after my membership.
So have they asked you to stop promoting them?
No, I've already had an email saying, let's come again next year. So I'll be there. But no, the Titans.
Did you get to many games this year?
Titans I did. And it was great, having moved up here in 2013 to cover the Titans. It was great for the last 3 games of the year to sit in the northern stand and yell at the refs and cheer the boys on for 3 wins, I think it was. So I know the kids and
I know a couple of members, and it was a hard year to keep people happy, but I know a few people that are long-term seat holders, and they didn't get to sit in their seats at all this year, which is tough. So hopefully we all get to just jam back in there next year, because I reckon it'll be a full house.
We had the record crowds for.
Yeah, I was at that game. I think that was the Broncos game, wasn't it?
Well, I think we had the top 3. I think the last 3 games were 9,500 roughly. I think they were the 3 highest regular season attendances.
Yeah, it was good.
So we can build. The beauty of it is, I think we feel like we've got a team that can build from a solid, strong base. They're going to come back in a few weeks' time to start preseason and know that they can be competitive and be bolstered by the signings that they've made.
Yeah,
and not relying on them to lift them up. I think the trust and belief that will be built in the group will be their strongest asset.
Shame to see a couple of guys leave. I think Ryan James deserved to be at the club when it's on the up, and it's just a shame of he's probably where his knees are at or whatever, and the club couldn't come up with the money to keep him. I would have liked, for all the years that he's been there when haven't been going as good, it would have been good to see him be there. But I think the fact that they've kept Kevin Proctor's, I think that was a good move. That you're going to have, an experienced head to lead these young fellas around. Jared Wallace was in good form at the back end of the year. And then we've got obviously Tino, Herman Sasa, Fafita chiming in, and then you've still got Mo. You got Sam Lasoni. Both those boys had great years. Jolliffe. A 4-pack looks red hot.
The guy I knew nothing about, who I'm excited to see develop over the next 2-3 years, is that Bo Firma.
Yes, yep.
From the first game he played, he just was that, and I think that's something the Titans have lacked, is just someone on an edge who can create opportunities and find space. And it seems like every time he took a run, he ended up in the backfield, just didn't know what to do when he got there. But
Brian Kelly
had a great season.
Really finished well. And do you know what? I knew AJ was good, but I was like, you can't expect him to carry this team. He's still a young fella. But when he came back into that team, it's like they went from when you play touch footy but you walk?
Yeah.
It was like the team went from that to everything in fast forward. And I think they've been in slow motion a little bit over the last few years.
Very one-paced, yep.
Once he come in, everything was just fast, and it was just everything you want out of a fullback, just blowing a hole open. Yeah,
and his threat creates space and time for the guys inside him, because you can't compact your defensive line, because you think, well, if he gets on the outside shoulder of me, I'm dead. So you create that extra space in the defensive line, which gives Ash and Jamal that extra space. Kevy Proctor came storming back into the form we hoped he'd.
He was robbed. I don't know if we've spoken since then, but that Sharks game was an atrocity. And thankfully, it's probably, it'll get forgotten regardless of.
What if you keep bringing it up? It won't.
Yeah, okay. But we were robbed of that game. We should have played finals, because they should have been 2 less and we should have been 2 more. But he was in great form at the back end of the year, and he deserved to play those games, I thought.
And I think part of that is the presence of AJ and just how well he was playing, because if you're looking at the guy running behind at the back, then the guy that's running the line at front, if you hit him, then he's going to have less defensive attention.
I think there was no extra effort there. He's always putting that effort in. But when you're putting that effort in to plug the gaps, as opposed to putting that effort in around a team of guys that are full of energy and going forward, well then obviously it starts to stand out. But I'm really excited about next year. The team looked really well. And then you got Ash and Jamal Fogarty going to go around again together next year, which gives us some. I don't think we've had that sort of stability in the halves for a while.
What's the one position that you would have a question mark over?
I think it's hooker at the moment for us.
I agree.
Because
Mitrain played great at the end of the year.
Because I've not. I'm still a fan of Nathan Peets. I don't know what he went from being New South Wales' best player to not making the Titans team. I'm still a fan of him. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I would. It's a shame to see him go, and from where he was in his career as well.
I think the modern game demands a hooker that can take advantage of a quick play of the ball. And that's not Pete's strength. He's the toughest competitor in that club, the fittest bloke, the guy that holds a standard that other guys have to reach. But if you look at Cameron Smith's the exception, I guess, but if you look
he's not exactly exploding out of dummy half.
No, but if you look at Damien Cook and Api Coruscant and these kind of guys, you've got to be able to get your forwards moving across the advantage line or creating, and Mitrain I'd love to see a young hooker from the coast emerge.
You talk about elephants in the room. I was sitting there, 9:30 Sunday night, waiting for an announcement.
Not going to happen.
And he kept saying, just lastly, and I thought, here we go. I'm watching the footy on my own because kids are not interested. The great man's about to announce his retirement. No, thank the Victorian people. I'm like, oh, yeah, but it's coming after this. Nothing. The kids are already at school here on the Gold Coast.
It wouldn't surprise me if he hasn't allowed himself the time that he wants to actually sit down and consider it.
It was a really nice message after the game from Brandon Smith. He said, I want him to play again. I want him to carry me to another 2 rings.
Yeah.
So that's a fair call.
I used to write Cameron's column with him for Big League for a season. We had him as a columnist. And I would message him Monday saying, all right, mate, we'll catch up and we'll do the column. Hear crickets, hear nothing. Tuesday morning, okay, mate, deadline tonight. Can we get this column knocked over? Because you'd always send it back to him and just for an approval. Lunchtime would come, haven't heard from him. And you think, do I have to find a new columnist this week? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
3 o'clock, he'd just ring you and go, all right, mate, how you going? Do the column now? And you're like, yeah. Nothing.
You've got an editor up your ribs waiting for a column.
I was the editor, so
yeah, right.
I had all the pressure hanging over my head. So, but it was we always got it done. And I was talking to my wife the other night. I honestly think there's a possibility
that's a storm in the background rolling as we're talking about this.
Yeah.
It could be a bad omen.
Cameron might be orchestrating that as well. It wouldn't surprise me if he hasn't. He's so focused and so intense on what he wants to achieve that he might not have sat down for 2 or 3 days and mulled over exactly what he wants to do. Talked about it with his wife, considered the family. I wouldn't be surprised if he's now sitting down for a few days working it out. He might have indicated...
Maybe he's not got that theatrical streak like I do. Like some people, some people would have pictured it like hold the cup and then like claim it and drop the mic. I'm out. See, whereas he's just like, there was a job to do. I did the job.
I honestly think that's a possibility that he was so focused on getting them to that point on Sunday night.
Because some people are like, it's him making it more about him because the longer he takes, the more questions get asked. Whereas it's probably the opposite. You're saying he's not about the theatrics of on grand final day, I'm going to, go out in a blaze of glory.
He is not thinking 2
I'll
weeks
see how
ahead.
my body feels, whether I want to line up for another off-season, and that's when I'll make the decision.
He's not thinking 2 weeks ahead, let alone a month
crazy.
ahead. So,
but there's got to be some family. As a family, they're planning because.
Well,
like if the family's living here already, that to me that says 2 options. He's coming to the Titans. That's our hooker's problem solved.
Nice solution.
I don't think he will, but hey, I'd love him to. That'd be great.
Let him have him till
I'm
February
buying,
off.
if he announces it for the Titans, I'm buying tickets to Sydney first weekend of October. Or he's going to commute back because like family's going to be here and he's going to play another season for the Storm.
Yeah, I think they're both. Or he retires and.
Or he retires. Yeah, I don't know.
But I genuinely think that is probably the conversation and the consideration he's giving now.
Hands down, he definitely deserves to make whatever decision he wants. He is the greatest player to play our game. And maybe not the most talented, but he's certainly the most dominant player for the period of time that he's been to be able to control the game. And you know, like, it's not like people aren't going to think back and go, oh, what? Remember that sidestep? Or do you remember that 30-metre ball that he threw? Or, you know, it's going to be just game control that, you know, just, and he's going to have his hate. He's a bit. People talk about, oh, have you ever seen someone booed or have you ever seen someone so hated? Like, yeah, his name was Wally Lewis.
He was pretty good too.
Where were you guys in the 80s?
The thing with Cameron that I've said to a few people in the past week or so is that whether he's the most talented, skillful, GOAT, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah,
he's the most in-tune rugby league player I've ever seen. He somehow, obviously his dad Wayne was a good player as well, but he is so connected with what rugby league is about within him. Somehow in his DNA is how rugby league works, because he understands it, controls it, like you say, and just plays the game in a simple fashion that is so effective and so dominant.
Yep.
I've never seen someone so... Peter Sterling, when I was a kid, was the guy I thought controlled a football game better than anyone. But he just somehow knows 3 plays ahead of time what's going to happen.
You and I were talking about it before, about, you know, the great players that come through. And I said, was it the players or was it Melbourne? Maybe it was Cameron. Because again, Sir Hectic Cheese, after the game, basically said that Smithy does all the coaching and Bellamy gets paid a lot of money to do nothing, which I'm sure they've got some weird relationship, because I don't reckon there'd be too many blokes who'd be willing to say that on national telly about Craig Bellamy. But he is that common denominator that's, when we go, oh, geez, the Storm have been dominant and they've got this ability to churn out, you know, how did they line up and get all those great players at once? And it's like, well, there's 2 common denominators. Craig Bellamy and Cameron Smith have been there the entire time, and you've just watched them transition from potentially producing 3 potential immortals through to now you've got Munster, Grant, you know, Hughes, Pappenhausen. You know, the production line's just started again, and Cameron's the common denominator, but arguably Harry Grant was better this year in his position.
You look at the guys that won a premiership on Sunday night: Branko Lee, Jerome Hughes,
2 ex-Titans.
Ryan Pappenhausen.
Yeah.
Kenny Bromwich was not on anyone's radar, and now he's, you know, for all the Storm have achieved, you're right. There is something in that system that Craig and Cameron head up that turns good footballers into elite footballers within that structure.
Because you talk about the GOAT arguments, and I can't talk of anyone sort of pre-90s, you know, solidly. Wally's the GOAT in many people's eyes, but never produced the national championship, because it was at the back end of his career. So
yeah. South of the border, it's a mute
argument.
The guy you love to hate.
But you look at any of them, none of them were as dominant at a national level in Origin, you know, NRL and internationally like Cameron Smith.
It depends how we gauge greatness.
Because the history books are only going to give him 4 premierships now.
Only.
But he's actually got 6. He's got 6 rings at home, right?
Yeah.
And like a dozen grand finals or something ridiculous. No one else comes close to that in the modern era.
Except
you've got to go back to like the teams of
Cooper
the
Cronk's probably close.
Cooper. Yeah, of course. I forgot Coops.
But if we're going to gauge greatness on they're, and it's the way they kind of judge the immortal, which is interesting. It's like how people who change the game. There are people who've changed the game. Andrew Johns changed the game. Wally Lewis changed the game. Cameron Smith just won more games, played more games.
Problem
at
is,
every level.
people don't like the way Cameron changed the game because it's controlling the ref as much as it's controlling the other team, as it's controlling the ruck, as it's controlling the flow of game. And if you're on the other side of that, it's not a nice place to be.
And that will be the argument, because we saw when he chased down Nick Kotrick in the prelim, commentators saying that could be the greatest play of Cameron Smith's career. He's played 430 games of first grade, let alone Test and Origin. It's not easy to nail down Cameron Smith's 5 greatest plays. Andrew Johns and those kind of guys, they have individual highlights that are unforgettable.
But that's what I think puts him on the next level. Is like Joey played 2 grand finals, and if you got to come up with Andrew Johns' finest moment down the blind side, back into Darren Albert. It's off the top of your head.
Origin.
Yeah.
Come back from a broken jaw. Fittler was the same. But
hated him.
That's why I think people find it easy to...
You think of Freddie, it's him planting his foot in a big sidestep,
That's why I think people are quick to underestimate Cameron's achievements, because they can't pinpoint why he was so good. It's hard to actually describe Cameron Smith's greatness, but it is just a complete innate understanding of rugby league to the point where he can manipulate results to his team's favour, which is shown by the winning record he's had at every level. I just, whether you say he's the most skillful, the best athlete, all that kind of stuff. We call him the accountant for 20 years.
That's what popped into my head.
But here's a guy who's never been injured. How do we gauge an athlete?
Yeah, well, you definitely want him running some sort of program in your club after he stopped playing footy.
Whatever he's doing Monday to Friday.
Is it genetics, or what does he do? What is it pre and post game? Or?
He is predisposed and somehow built.
It's not like
within
he's
his
hiding
DNA.
on the wing.
No, he's making 50 tackles a game, and that's what I find interesting. Is too, even on Sunday night, I felt like in the first 15 minutes, it seemed like he was making a lot of tackles, and I thought, well, Penrith are obviously trying to. But it's the worst. I don't know if it's a tactic or not, but if you want the ruck to be any kind of speed, you run as far away from Cameron Smith as you can. Because even if he's not the most dominant, he's never probably bruised anyone, but he's always the last one up. He's always manipulating the position of the ruck, slowing it down. I don't get the sentiment that Cameron Smith is not, if not the greatest, worth being on the podium.
So put all the media hype aside. If you're Harry Grant, you're going back to the Storm next year, regardless of what the media says. You're like, he's potentially just missed out on a ring to play first grade.
Yeah, but he'll benefit from that. He's only young.
But what I'm saying is Cameron goes, no, I'm going around again. I've got every right to. Body feels amazing. Why wouldn't I collect another $1 million for another 12 months' work? You've then got Harry Grant, Brandon Smith, Cameron Smith. Brandon stays 14. He's a good 14 regardless, and sounds like he's happy to do so because he's one of the boys and he seems like he's not going anywhere from that club.
I actually think that's the hardest. I think it actually gets more difficult when Cameron leaves, because you've got to pick your 9 then. And if it's Harry Grant...
But they're both playing every week. You fit them both in the 17 every week.
Oh, absolutely, but it depends where Brandon Smith wants to play.
Do you think Craig Bellamy lets ego get in front of the team?
Never.
So it doesn't matter. It becomes it's whoever's best gets the 9.
Absolutely, but if Brandon Smith senses that he's not the best choice for number 9, guess who gets more money, a starting number 9 or a 14?
Yeah, he just doesn't come across as that sort of kid.
No, he doesn't, but at some point you've got to think, how is my career going to play out? Kurt Gidley, even Tyrone Robertson, there's been so many guys who are so versatile, almost to their own detriment. You could play Brandon Smith at front row, it wouldn't matter.
He does sometimes, doesn't he? Yeah.
But at some point, he's going to want to own a position. And it might not be at hooker. And if he wants to play 13, and he could be a really good 13, then,
yeah, of course.
then
yeah,
that's fine. But yeah, I think that's the more interesting. Who's the number 2 behind Cameron Smith as it
I didn't see
stands?
enough of Harry Grant this year to actually know how well his game's going, but you know,
He's special, and he can't. He wouldn't. You
bloke
wouldn't
at
play
my
him
work
anywhere
told
else.
me last year. He's like, this Harry Grant kid,
Yeah.
and I was like, I'm not. Who are you talking about? He's like, he's on the sunny coast. He's the Sean Artwork. Shout out, mate. You gave me the good oil. He was at a game, sunny coast, and they're like, that kid next Origin hooker, and it's like, on the sunny what?
He
He's
might play
playing for the
Origin
Falcons.
before he plays for the Storm.
Potentially, but I don't know. If you're Harry Grant, he's going back to the Storm regardless next year, surely.
I think so. I think he'd back himself to be.
You're not going to start the Tigers and run 9th.
Well, the beauty of Harry Grant at the moment is if he doesn't go to the Storm, because I saw a story that how he got to the Tigers was
Like
that,
Harry Grant at the Titans next year.
well, the beauty of it is his situation at the moment is he went to Craig and said, I'm thinking about going to Super League just to play some footy. And Bellamy was the one that said, well, you could play in the NRL if you want.
Yeah, right.
So that's how they organised the loan agreement with the Tigers. And then they got Momorowski as part of that as well. But Harry Grant might be in the same situation in a month's time and be looking for a club to play number 9 for.
Mate, I could talk to you about this stuff for hours. We got to get into our Origin teams.
Okay, yep.
We've been going for ages. This could end up being a 2-part. We're in Joe Rogan territory. We've been waffling. Give us. I gave you a pen and paper.
Origin. Yeah, I'm excited about Origin. There are a lot of guys who are going to play Origin this year that we probably never thought would, and that's why I'm excited.
It's weird to
Especially
say, but
for
it's
your
probably going
Queenslanders.
to get more focus than it normally does, which is hard to think about.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how the next few weeks sort of plays out in amongst a Melbourne Cup and a Masters tournament that's sneaking up on us too.
I struggle to fill my 17 just because we got so many options that I don't know who to put in the positions.
If you can get past the first 5, I'll be surprised.
So I'll let you go first. The good news is it's the same curse that you Bluesers have always got.
Too many players, too many good players to pick.
You can
from.
only run out 17 guys against
Yeah.
us. It's the same thing. We've only got to come up with 17 good ones, and you've got to try and pick which 17, and they're never any good. Your 17.
The hard part of this for me is that given we are the reigning champs, incumbency plays a role, but I wanted to reward the guys who've played finals like we used to for Kangaroo Tours. But I've mostly stuck solid with our team from last year. So I'll just rattle off quickly the guys that Tedesco, Adokar and Whiten, they all play. I'm going to put Stephen Crichton in at centre because I hate the fact that New South Wales always want to pick guys out of position and manufacture. For a moment, I thought about putting Isaiah Yeo in the centres because that's something I feel like Blue selectors like doing.
Is
But
Tommy Turbo ruled out now?
yeah, he's not playing. So we've got to find a new centre. So Zach Lomax had a pretty good year for the Dragons, but I want to reward the guy that played a grand final.
You guys aren't picking anyone from the Dragons.
I've got one.
Maybe Cam McInnes.
I've got one. Tyson Frizzell's going to be
Oh,
in now.
yeah, but he's not staying at the Dragons.
Well, that's true. He's gone. Nick Kotrick.
Sorry, Azza.
Nick Kotrick's mother winger. Keary and Cleary. Our Haas for the next 10 years. Payne Haas, Damien Cook.
What about the try Cleary scored on Sunday night? I'm not a fan of the kid, but wow, it was
good.
That's just like willing your team to get on. Like,
Yeah, would have been great 50 minutes earlier.
yeah,
He looked really strong in the last 10 minutes. I just wish he'd run the ball like that 10 minutes into the game. I don't know. Anyway.
Sorry.
He'll learn. He'll get better.
Off track.
Haas,
Yep.
Payne Cook, Damien Cook, Jake Trebojevic. Got to push him up to the middle because I want my man Cameron Murray.
Where you got Jake?
Front row.
Front row.
Yeah, because I want my man Cameron Murray playing 13.
Mm-hmm.
Boyd Cordner is a concern.
Is this controversial? You better drop some controversy.
No, I'm going to leave him in because he's our incumbent captain as far as I'm
Putting an
remember.
asterisk there.
Watching him play the finals made me worry about his long-term health. I think his heart's too big for his
To be
body.
honest, that was pretty sad because he lost his cousin
Yeah.
like through a head injury and then come out and got knocked out.
Yep.
Pretty bad.
Yeah. He wills himself to do things I'm not sure his body wants to do anymore. He's one of the bravest blokes getting around, but I almost don't want to put him in the team for his own.
I'm sure he
well-being.
won't play if he's not ready to play.
No, I know, but he'll do everything he can to play, and then and my bench is probably the 14 was the tricky one. I'm going to put Cody Walker in, or even Cameron McGuinness, but I'm going to go with Clint Gutherson.
Hang on, you've got Tedesco at 1 too, and he's still got an asterisk next to him at the moment.
Has he?
He's only just started running straight lines.
He's fine. He's fine.
We'll see.
You guys wish he won't play.
It's hopeless, that kid.
Clint Gutherson, what he did in the final against South. Oh, it's funny. I still remember Clint Gutherson as the awkward Manly winger from a few years ago. And I haven't watched him probably an awful lot to understand his current position. But the way he played in that final against, I think, South for 15 minutes was quite extraordinary.
I'd like to see little Pappy v AJ.
Yeah, the reason I went Gutherson was he just feels
more experience, or a bit more.
He could play 5'8" fullback, centre wing.
Yep.
Pappenhausen's probably an out-and-out fullback, and maybe you could put Gutherson at hooker if you needed to as well.
You got Cody Walker in there?
I haven't.
Ooh, jeez.
I went ultimate versatility. So I've gone for Nukin, Daniel Saifidi, and Isaiah Yeo as my... Isaiah Yeo could play the centres if something goes wrong in the outside backs as well. So, again, so many good players, only 17 spots.
I got the same problem over here.
Yeah, I'm looking to
You don't believe me, do you?
see who your centres are going to be.
Yeah, I haven't written them down yet. All right, I've got AJ.
Dale Copley's injured, by the way.
He's not in the squad. No. And I can't pick Holmes for the first game, so I figured this is game 1. So I've left Val out as well.
Gene Miles ruled himself out too.
Oh, is he? Mal's all right though. Mal's fit. All right, let's go. We've got AJ in the 1. I've got Gagai in 2. I'm going to come back to 3 and 4. I've got Sammy in 5. I've got Munster in 6. I think DCE and Munster pick themselves. I am tempted to throw Munster into the centres to fix our centres problem and gamble on Ben Hunt in the halves.
I hope you're in charge of selections on Tuesday night.
I've watched footy for a long time and I really don't know what I'm talking about. People will work that out at some point. Papali in the 8. I'm going to go Friend in the 9. Just because he's been stuck behind Cameron Smith for so long, and I'd just like to see him get the 9 just once in his career. I'm not sure he's in the greatest form, but I'm sure he'll do the job.
Wasn't Ben Hunt your best player last year's series?
Yeah, he had a pretty busted season this year, but didn't he? I've got Mo in the 10.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. I think he's
know.
going to be I think he's going to be in our front row.
I'm
for
worried
some years
you're
to come.
going to pick up all the Titans and they'll be busted by. We won't get it back till mid-February.
No, we won't. 11 and 12, I haven't even put them in yet. I'm going to go Kafusi.
From 6 down, you're okay.
Kafusi and who else have I got here? Carrigan. Patrick Carrigan from the Broncos. And then I've got Jai Arrow lock. I still haven't got... So I'm going to go 14. I'm going to go Harry Grant. Call up.
Ooh. Not much versatility there for your 14. You got an outside back in there as well on your bench?
I don't like seeing backs on the bench. Please. They can sort it out.
You haven't got any backs in your starting team
I haven't got any backs in the starting. I can't put any on the bench. People are just shaking their heads going, glad he's not picking. There's a couple of guys that, to be fair, I don't know them as well.
Corey Allen's not a bad option for a wing.
Cohen Hess gets a call up on the bench. I'm going to go... who else we got? Tino. Tino's on the bench. And this is good podcast. This is good content. People definitely haven't switched off by now.
If everyone can see the list we're playing with.
Christian Welch, 17. Now, I don't know if that's in the right naming convention or what, but that's how it is, people. And then I've just realised I still haven't picked any centres.
You don't have any centres.
Shit.
Your options are Kurt Capewell, Brenko Lee.
Before the grand final, I wouldn't have said Brenko was ready to play Origin, but I'm just going to give him...
I still probably think he's not ready, but you don't have any other options.
We've got Xavier Coates, and you've got Corey Allen from South. He's more of a fullback, isn't he?
Fullback winger. Yeah, I don't know if I'd throw him in the centres.
I like Gagai on the wing. That's why I'm...
Yeah, Capewell's played plenty of centre. And he's not going to let you down defensively.
Kurt Capewell. He's got a spot. You convinced me. Controversy. Throwing Munster into the 4 and Ben Hunt into the 6. You heard it here first.
Wow. It is controversial. It's like you've been on the Melbourne Cup drink already.
We've been going for ages. I wanted to hear a bit of golf, but what do you got for us? What's been going on in the world of golf?
We've had a few tournaments in Oz the past 3 weeks. We've had a WA PGA and WA Open and a Northern Territory PGA, which Aaron Pike won last weekend.
So you've been virtually flying around the country?
I've been virtually, conducting interviews from Kalgoorlie to Perth to Palmerston. Now we've got nothing for a long time till late January. And also we've got no major events. We've got no Australian Open, no Australian PGA and no Vic Open until late next year at the earliest.
And was the decision on that we just can't get the names back into the country? There's no internationals are going to sit in a hotel for 2 weeks to come and play here?
It's a domino effect of you can't get international players in, which sponsors...
I noticed Wade Ormsby's sitting in a hotel room at the moment in Adelaide.
He's just come back from Europe. Brad Kennedy will be... he played his first, 46 years old, played his first PGA Tour event on the weekend and did really well. And he's going to be sitting in a hotel in Sydney now for the next 2 weeks.
We've seen the UFC fighters doing that. They've been flying in and out to Abu Dhabi and then back into hotels on the way back in.
Yeah, so... it's twofold. We can't get international players to come for a couple of tournaments.
But it's tough on the locals as well.
And then the sponsors won't put up the money for a tournament of that stature. So it was basically, they didn't want to devalue our major events by playing them for $300,000 instead of $1.5 million. So
it's a shame too. One of the highlights of my sporting year last year was out at Royal Pines, watching the golfers. So
they've got the Players Series, which is going to launch early next year, which will be tournaments in Melbourne and Sydney, which will give guys something to play, and girls. It's a guys and girls joint tournament. That's a new addition to the calendar. So there hopefully will be some smaller events starting next year.
Yep.
But yeah, we're looking at, but then we've got the Masters coming up oddly in 2 weeks' time.
So who's looking good for that?
Yeah, the talk at the moment, of course, is still around. I think he was a topic of discussion last time, is Bryson DeChambeau. So he won the US Open not too long ago, and on the weekend showed his TrackMan numbers of he hit a drive, carried a drive 400 yards, which the talk really around
That's
golf,
twice the back fence at Top Golf, right? So he hits it twice as far as I can hit it.
Pretty much, yeah. And so he's pushing the boundaries, and what everyone is, there's a general sense in golf at the moment that people hope he comes out and completely obliterates Augusta, because then what needs to happen will happen to make the game
back to wooden club heads.
Well, the simplest solution is a tour ball. So basically, it's like hitting a plastic ball. Like they'll come up with a model that pros can swing as hard as they like. It just won't carry 400.
But then who provides the tour ball?
Yeah, someone will come up with a standard. And
you take a lot of money out of golf by putting them all on the same.
Well, they don't pay for balls anyway.
No, but what I'm saying is that they get paid a lot of money to play with a particular ball.
That's true. But if companies don't have to pay them endorsement fees, and we're still all going to buy the ball, Augusta could actually...
But what are they going to say? They're going to say, when I'm on the range, I hit a Titleist.
Yeah, each company will... It'd be like the equipment. Each company will come up with their ball that
conforms to the tour.
conforms to the
righto.
Um,
But then you'll have ball tamper. Oh, imagine the I can see the scandals already.
but at the
You're
moment,
weighing in one ball, it's going through scrutineering, and then next minute you've got another one in his pocket.
happens with equipment at the moment. I think it was Patrick Cantlay last year at the British Open.
I had a question
Had
for
his
you,
driver
actually.
that said didn't conform.
Why don't golfers? I'm just completely going off topic
Yeah.
here. Why don't golfers carry right-handers carry a left-handed club in their bag with them?
You're only allowed to carry 14 total, and they don't get in those.
Do you ever actually hit a 6-iron though?
Well,
I don't.
it's almost my favourite club.
I could carry 3 clubs around.
But what the pros do is carry 4 wedges.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Well, that's where that's where we, as amateurs, that's what we should be practicing with as well.
Yeah,
because that's where, we can all blast it down there and get near the green. It's
Yeah.
what happens when we get there that turns 4 into 6 real quick.
Yeah, see, if it was me, I'd be carrying a lefty with me. Just for that time, you got to get out from around the tree.
Yeah, Phil Mickelson has done, I think it was the Masters 2 years ago, took 2 drivers.
Oh, yeah.
So for that, for set up for different reasons. So he could hit a draw with one and maybe a fade with the other.
Yep.
So there is a bit of that, but it's mainly in the wedges that guys will have. They'll have a pitching wedge as well and 4 others. So they might have 6 clubs in their bag that are from 100 yards and in, because that's where
they're playing all their golf.
And that's where the money's made.
Well, we could talk all night. We'll get you back in shortly again. But on that note, I'm going to say thank you to Gripstar Socks. Did you get a set of them last time?
I have, and they have transformed my running.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, I love them. They're so good to run in.
Oh, that's good to hear. Jolie will be happy. I've got a hat for you. I don't think you got a hat last time. There's a hat for you.
Beautiful, thank you.
Where can the listeners follow and find your work?
PGA website, Australian Golf Digest magazine, and if you feel like some banter on Twitter, then I'm always up for that.
As always, folks, you know where to find us. Please like, follow, and share. Apologies, we've been a little bit intermittent lately, but we've got a few good podcasts to finish the year, and then we'll be back again next year. So find us on all the socials, and we'll see you again next week. Cheers.